René, about a year ago, you had a near-death experience. Before you had the experience, what was your opinion about the subject? Well, until it happened, I really didn't know anything about such things. In fact, nothing at all. And I hadn't looked into it at all. I had always thought that when you're dead, you're dead. That's it. That there's nothing after that. I am Catholic and a believer too, but that there's life after death, I never believed that. And if anybody had told me prior to a year ago that there was such a thing as a near-death experience, I would have said, no, that's humbug. Just charlatanism. There's no such thing. So shortly after your wife's death, you experienced a near-death experience. Yes, that was about 2 days after my wife's funeral, a Friday morning. I had this burning pain in my stomach. It was a kind of pain I had never had before. I never had such burning sensation in the stomach, and I drank a little milk, hoping that would help, but it was no use. It got gradually worse and worse. I can't even describe the sort of pain it was, until finally my son said, "Dad, we're going to the hospital." But I said, no, it's only heartburn, it'll pass. But I still had the pains later on, and they in fact got much worse, much more intense. So my son said again, "Let's go, Dad, we need to go to the hospital." By that time, I was past caring about what was going on around me. I just wanted the pain to disappear. We made the drive to the hospital, which was about 15 miles away. I don't know to this day how I even survived the drive because of the massive pain I was experiencing. I found out later that I went on foot into the emergency room, but from then on, I have no recollection, no clue at all what happened after that. So how did the near-death experience come about? Well, all of a sudden, the pains were gone. But I wasn't conscious. There was no pain. But suddenly, I saw a bright, really bright, glaring light. Not a tunnel, as you usually hear of. I didn't see that. Just an extremely glaring white light that really dazzled me. And suddenly, I saw my wife. Your deceased wife? Yes, my deceased wife. She came to me and said, "Hi, René. How are you doing?" "I'm doing fine," I answered. She took me by the arm, gave me a kiss, and said, "René, don't worry. I'm doing just fine here. Go on back down now and look after the kids. But promise me you won't stay alone." And that went on for what felt like an eternity. The time my wife was talking to me, that is. In what way did you see your wife? Well, she had exactly the same clothes on that she wore in the coffin. They were effectively exactly the same clothes. You mean to say that you saw her in the same way you would see anyone in front of you now? Yes, just like you and me sitting here now, the very same way. We stood there together. She took my arm, and it was just like in real life. And I said to myself, this is not a dream. Apart from your wife, did you see anything else? No, it was just me and my wife. Even in the surroundings, I didn't see anything, just whiteness. But it didn't dazzle as much anymore, just all white. It was I can't really describe the whiteness. It was a pleasant white, not a glaring white. So how did the story continue? Suddenly I came to, that is to say, I woke up. I was lying in bed, and I said to myself, "In God's name, where am I?" I looked left and right. I looked at the wall, and there was a clock, and it said 12:30. And as I turned my head, I saw there was a woman standing beside me. She was holding her hand to my forehead. I looked at the clock again, and then I looked to the other side, and suddenly a nurse was standing at the bed beside me, and she said, "Hello." I replied, "Where am I?" I had no idea where I was. I assumed I was in a hospital somewhere. But why? Why am I in a hospital? But this woman you saw first, she wasn't the nurse? No, not the same one. The first one, the one that held her hand to my forehead, was just someone I knew slightly. That is to say, I didn't know the woman personally at that time. I had seen her 3 or 4 times before, no more than that. Then suddenly I saw the nurse, very clearly. I said to myself, what does it mean that I'm seeing a strange woman at my bedside? But then I started, for the first time, to put 2 and 2 together. The nurse said to me, Mr. Volken, you have had a heart attack. Your heart stopped for 9.5 minutes. But now you're on the mend. At that moment, I had the thought, not of a near-death experience, that didn't even come into my head, but I knew I'd seen my wife, and I knew I had been dead. Afterwards, when my wife said to me, go back down to our kids, but please don't stay alone, the fact that the strange woman was suddenly standing at my bedside with her hand on my head, what did that mean? At that point, I felt I was going crazy. That worried or confused you? Well, it was more confusing than worrying. My question was, what is this all about? What does it mean? Does my wife, my deceased wife, want to partner me up with the other woman? Even though I knew for a fact that my deceased wife didn't know the other woman at all, she didn't know her? No. I was in hospital for 5 days after that, and the woman I saw in hospital, who held her hand to my forehead, had a restaurant in the neighboring village. As far as I was concerned, it was too much of a coincidence. I hadn't a moment of peace after that. I went to the restaurant eventually and started up a conversation with the woman, but didn't talk about what happened. So I then went to the restaurant a second time, and even a third time. And, well, the chats became more interesting, I have to say. So then I said to myself, okay, it's time you broached the subject. So I told her exactly what I had experienced, and she started to cry. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Did I say something wrong? She wiped away her tears and replied, on exactly that Sunday, I left for a holiday in Turkey. At exactly 12:30, I was in the luggage collection point at the airport when suddenly she saw me in her mind's eye and said to herself, finally, he has arrived. Then it was my turn to start crying. So then you got to know each other better? Yes, our chats got more involved, and I delved into the near-death experience a little more. I went on the internet, and I read reports from other people who had had similar experience, or more or less the same thing as I had. And now I have to say, this isn't humbug. It's real. It's a reality. And now I'm living happily together with Evelyn. So have you come to the conclusion that your wife, in a sense, arranged a match for you with this woman? That's still the way I see it, yes. My wife got me hitched. Yes. I would just say that I lost my wife in June, and in September I fell in love with Evelyn. I've always said, that's really pushing it. There's no way, it's too soon, it can't happen. René, just leave it be. I spoke to the kids about the whole thing for hours on end, and I told them, yes, I know what I'm doing is wrong, But controlling emotions is something I can't do either. And then I said, "It's your mother. I'm sorry." What effect did this near-death experience have on your approach to life afterwards, or on your attitude to death? Well, I now have a very different and much more positive outlook on life than I did before. And as for fear of death, absolutely none at all. Absolutely none? And why is that? Because they are all doing just fine on the other side. They are happy and all's well with them. My attitude to life has changed drastically. I used to flare up easily. I was fairly quick-tempered, but not anymore. And stress is something I don't have anymore. I will say, life is too short to be getting upset or stressed out. And I still say the heart attack is the best thing that could ever have happened to me. I live a lot differently now, with more awareness than before. And what do people around you say when you tell them all this? Well, the kids are always telling me, "Dad, you're going crazy." They don't know me like that. I tell them that what would really interest me would be a yoga course. They pretty much just laugh at me when I said that. I tried to explain why I have become like that. I told them, "I saw your mum, and your mum is doing just fine." And you can see how quickly it can happen, that you're suddenly not there anymore. René, many thanks for the interview. My pleasure.